There are 10,000 ways to die in the 41st millennium, and almost none of them are merciful. For the warriors of the Adeptus Astartes, death is not feared, but expected. To be born a space marine is to be forged into a weapon of the Emperor's will, and weapons are not meant to endure forever, only to strike true when called upon. On the shattered surface of Graxos Prime, the Ultramarines stood ready to strike. Their gunship, the Thunderhawk Indomitable, circled low above a ruined manufactorium complex, its engines cutting through smoke and ash. Below, the landscape stretched in devastation, skeletal remains of habblocks clawed toward a blood-red sky, and a foul haze clung to every street and ruin. What had once been an imperial city now pulsed with infestation. Tyranid spores clung to the masonry, swollen sacks of alien biomass throbbing like infected wounds across the battlefield. Brother Captain Titus stood at the Thunderhawk's hatch, his helm cradled beneath one arm. His eyes scanned the carnage below with cold detachment, though within him stirred a grim anticipation. He had fought Tyranids before. He knew what awaited his brothers on the surface: endless hunger given form, a tide of chitin and claw that would not stop until every living thing was devoured. "Brothers," Titus spoke, his voice carrying the weight of command even over the growl of the engines. "Today we fight not for survival, but for legacy. Graxos Prime is but one world of a million, but if it falls, the Tyranid hive fleet pushes closer to Ultramar itself. We stand as the wall. We do not yield." His words rolled through the squad, and the warriors responded not with cheers, but with silent resolve. Each Space Marine checked their gear in ritual precision. Brother Marius ran his gauntlets over the sleek casing of his plasma gun, whispering the machine spirit's canticle as its coils glowed faintly blue. Brother Decimus knelt, running a finger along his chainsword's teeth, ensuring every blade edge was sharp enough to bite through alien carapace. Apothecary Acastian secured vials of gene seed storage within his belt, reminders of what he must preserve if his brothers fell. Every movement was competence distilled into ritual, every weapon primed, every bolt checked, every helm sealed. The Thunderhawk's vox crackled with the voice of the surf pilot. "Captain, we are nearing the drop zone. Auspex readings confirm mass biosignatures ahead." Titus pulled his helm over his head, the world shifting into the enhanced clarity of auto-senses. His voice, now filtered through Vox Grill, became a growl of iron. "Brothers, the Emperor watches. Deploy." The ramp dropped. Fire and smoke blasted inward, carrying the scent of scorched flesh and acid-tinged air. Without hesitation, the Ultramarines leapt into the chaos below. The landing zone was a charnel ground. Wrecked Chimera transports lay split open, their guardsmen crews strewn in ragged heaps. The ground churned with ichor and mud, and already the chitters of approaching Tyranids echoed through the ruins. Brother Decimus raised his bolter and fired the first shot. The bolt round tore through the skull of a bounding Hormagaunt, its head erupting in a spray of acid-drenched gore. The sound was like a battle horn. The war had begun. Titus surveyed the battlefield, marking targets with swift precision. "Form firing line. Purge the swarm!" The Ultramarines moved with perfect cohesion, forming a wall of ceramite and firepower. Bolters roared, each explosive shell detonating within alien bodies. Marius unleashed arcs of searing plasma, vaporizing entire clusters of Tyranid forms in white-hot light. Decimus revved his chainsword, carving through stragglers that breached too close. Every movement was drilled, efficient, deadly, a symphony of violence performed by warriors bred for war. Yet even as they cut down the first wave, the air thickened with the sound of countless more claws scuttling in the distance. The ground shook with heavier footfalls, the promise of larger beasts yet unseen. Apothecary Acastian voxed over the squadnet. The swarm presses. This is merely the vanguard. Titus raised his blade, the power field crackling along its edge. Then we carve a path through the vanguard, and through the next, and through the next. Hold your ground, brothers. The galaxy shall remember what it costs the Tyranids to face the Emperor's chosen. Above them, the sky itself seemed to writhe. Mycetic spores streaked downward like meteors, slamming into the cityscape with bone-shattering force. Alien screeches split the air, echoing from every direction. The swarm was not coming. It was already here. The Ultramarines braced themselves. For in the grim darkness of the far future, courage is measured not in victory, but in how long one can stand before being consumed.
The swarm came like a living storm. From the ruins they spilled, gaunts in their hundreds, claws clicking, fangs gnashing, screeches overlapping in a cacophony of hunger. Their bodies moved as one, a tide of alien flesh scuttling and bounding over rubble, scaling walls, bursting from shattered windows. Every gap in the cityscape became a mouth through which the Tyranids poured. The Ultramarines opened fire. Bolters thundered in disciplined bursts, each round tearing through alien chitin and detonating inside flesh with explosive fury. Fragments of Tyranids scattered across the ground, but for every one that fell, 5 more replaced it. The very air stank of burning ichor, acrid and choking, clinging to armor seals and clogging filters. Brother Decimus roared a battle cry, switching from his bolter to chainsword as a cluster of hormagaunts lunged directly for him. The blade whirred to life, shrieking as its teeth bit through limbs and skulls. Alien blood sprayed across his armor in great arcs, sizzling as it corroded against ceramite. To his left, Brother Marius unleashed a stream of incandescent plasma, vaporizing an entire knot of gaunts in a blinding flash. The weapon howled as it vented superheated gases, its machine spirit straining against the demands placed upon it. "Steady your fire," Titus barked, his power sword cleaving down a leaping alien midair. "They seek to drown us in numbers. Deny them the kill." But the swarm only pressed harder. From above, a screech cut through the din. Shadows passed across the smoke-choked sky, winged gargoyles diving with claws outstretched. Their shrieks clawed at the senses, a psychic resonance carried in every note. They fell upon the squad like living missiles. Acastian's bolt pistol cracked, blasting a gargoyle skull apart inches from his helm. The apothecary shoved the corpse aside and moved immediately to cover Decimus, who was swarmed by a tangle of claws and wings. Together they tore the creatures down, their boots grinding alien skulls into paste. Then the earth shook. A monstrous bellow erupted from the ruins as a Tyranid warrior strode into view, towering over its lesser kin. Its chitinous armor gleamed wetly, ridged and barbed, its talons the size of a man. Bioweapons pulsed along its limbs, throbbing sacks brimming with corrosive ammunition. The smaller gaunts shifted around it instinctively, the swarm tightening its formation under the will of its synapse creature. The Ultramarines knew the threat at once. "Synapse beast," Titus voxed, his tone sharp. "Break it, and the swarm will falter." The warrior raised its biocannon, organic tubing throbbing as it spewed a torrent of flesh-melting projectiles into the firing line. Explosions of acid and bone shards erupted across the street. One caught Brother Livius, a devout Ultramarine on the squad's flank. His chest plate ruptured, molten ichor pouring across his body. He fell without a cry, only the hiss of his armor dissolving. "Livius is down," Acastian moved, but Titus halted him with a command. "Leave him. Secure his gene seed after. Break the beast now." Brother Marius charged his plasma gun, coils glowing dangerously bright. He leveled the weapon at the warrior and fired. The beam carved a molten gouge into its torso, alien flesh bubbling and bursting. The creature shrieked, but it did not fall. Instead, it turned its burning gaze directly on him. It lunged. The ground shook as talons slashed downward. Marius barely dodged, the strike cleaving through ferrocrete like paper. Decimus leapt forward, chainsword screaming as he carved a brutal wound across the warrior's knee joint. Black ichor gushed, the limb spasming under the impact. Titus seized the opening. With a roar amplified by his vox, he drove his power sword into the beast's chest, the blade crackling as it pierced through chitin and bone. The warrior writhed, screeching in agony, before collapsing in a heap that crushed several gaunts under its weight. For a heartbeat, the swarm faltered. The Tyranids nearest the corpse twitched uncertainly, their unity fraying without synapse control. Bolters barked once more, cutting them down in droves. But the moment of relief was fleeting. From deeper within the ruins came more shrieks, more heavy footsteps. The shadow of something vast moved among the smoke, far larger than any warrior. The city shook with each step. Apothecary Acastian's voice was grim. "Captain, another synapse approaches, something greater." Titus turned his gaze to the horizon, where the silhouette of a monstrous carnifex emerged, its bulk dwarfing the ruins around it. Its roar split the battlefield, a sound of raw, unstoppable hunger. And behind it, the swarm surged once more. The battle was only beginning.
The carnifex lumbered into the open like an avalanche of living muscle and armor. Each step sent cracks spidering across the ferrocrete streets. Its massive frame glistened with thick, black ichor, its armored carapace ridged and spiked like a fortress wall. Twin scything talons, each longer than a man was tall, carved gouges into the rubble as it advanced. Its maw opened in a cavernous roar, jagged teeth slick with the remains of some previous prey. And the swarm followed. Hormagaunts poured forward in a fresh tide, screeching as they bounded on all fours. Termagants raised their living weapons, vomiting streams of organic projectiles that spattered across walls and armor alike. Gargoyles swooped low, their wings buffeting the squad with gusts of foul, spore-laden air.
Titus leveled his power sword toward the monstrosity. "Brothers, we bring it down. Strike hard, strike true. The Emperor demands nothing less." The Ultramarines roared their assent. Bolters thundered, spitting explosive rounds into the advancing tide. Each shell detonated within alien flesh, shredding chitin and bone. The ground became a slurry of acher and broken limbs, but still the swarm pressed closer, a relentless tide driven by the psychic will of the hive mind. The Carnifex raised its biocannon. The weapon pulsed grotesquely, sacks along its length inflating with pressure before erupting. A torrent of corrosive sludge streaked across the street, detonating in a spray that melted ferrocrete into bubbling slurry. The blast caught Brother Quintus, lifting him off his feet. His armor smoked and bubbled as he crashed to the ground, motionless. A Castian surged forward instantly, his Narthesium tools snapping open. He reached Quintus's side, but one look told him the truth. The apothecary bowed his helm briefly. Gene seed retrieval required. He is gone. "Then retrieve it swiftly," Titus commanded, without breaking stride. "The Emperor will not lose his legacy." The Carnifex charged. Its roar shook the sky as it thundered forward, smashing aside rubble with terrifying force. Decimus braced himself, chainsword revving, but the beast struck first. A talon swept across, smashing into his chest plate with a crack like thunder. The impact hurled him into a wall, leaving a crater of shattered stone where his body struck. "Marius, now!" Titus roared. Brother Marius leveled his plasma gun, its coils glowing dangerously bright. The weapon screamed as he overcharged it beyond safe limits, venting waves of superheated vapor. He fired. The blast struck the Carnifex square in the chest, melting a crater of glowing flesh into its armor. The beast staggered, bellowing in rage. For a moment, the Ultramarines thought the strike had felled it, but the Carnifex only roared louder. With impossible fury, it hurled itself forward, crashing into the squad's formation. Rubble exploded outward as its talons slashed down. One gouged the street, missing Titus by inches. The other came for Marius. The plasma gunner tried to roll clear, too slow. The talon pierced through his torso, lifting him into the air. His scream was cut short as the Carnifex smashed him into the ground, leaving only broken ceramite and blood. "Brother down!" A Castian's vox was ragged, but he stood his ground, bolter in one hand, chainsword in the other. Titus moved like a thunderbolt. His power sword crackled as he carved a brutal slash across the Carnifex's arm. Chitin shattered, black ichor gushing like a waterfall. The beast shrieked. Swinging wildly, Titus ducked beneath its talons, moving with inhuman speed despite his massive armor. Every strike of his blade was deliberate, precise, fueled by decades of combat experience. This was the captain of the Ultramarines, master of war, warrior of 1,000 battles. "Decimus, flank it!" Titus roared. Bruised but alive, Decimus dragged himself free from the rubble, blood seeping through cracked armor plates. He raised his chainsword and charged, plunging the whirring blade into the Carnifex's hind leg. Alien flesh shredded under the assault, ichor spraying like a fountain. The beast reeled, stumbling. Now, Titus roared, leaping upward. With every ounce of his gene-forged strength, he drove his power sword deep into the Carnifex's skull. Sparks cascaded as the weapon's energy field ripped through alien bone and brain matter. The beast thrashed, bellowing, its massive frame convulsing as it swung wildly. Titus held fast, driving the blade deeper, roaring a litany of vengeance. With a final shriek, the beast collapsed, its body smashing into the ground hard enough to crack the street in two. Dust and ichor erupted in a choking wave. Silence hung for a heartbeat. Then the swarm screamed again, filling the void left by their fallen monster. From the ruins, more Tyranids surged, as if the hive itself refused to allow pause. This was not victory. This was only survival, moment to moment. Breathing hard, Titus ripped his blade free and looked to his squad. 3 stood now, himself, Decimus, and Acastian. Marius and Quintus lay broken. Livius was already gone. The swarm still surged. Decimus tightened his grip on his chainsword, blood leaking inside his helm. "We cannot hold, Captain." Titus met his gaze. "We hold until death. That is our duty. That is our honor." The swarm came on once more, shadows shifting deeper within the ruins. Something larger stirred still, its psychic presence pressing against the minds of every warrior like claws scraping across their thoughts. The Carnifex was dead, but the true horror had not yet revealed itself.
The battlefield had fallen into a grotesque silence, broken only by the distant clicking and screeching of the swarm gathering once more. The Carnifex's corpse steamed where it lay, ichor hissing as it ate through shattered ferrocrete. Its stench clung to the air, a thick, choking haze. But the silence was wrong. It wasn't absence, it was anticipation. Brother Acastian's vox crackled as he scanned the horizon. Movement halted. The swarm waits. His voice was tight, strained. Titus felt it too, a pressure, not physical, but psychic, coiling through the ruins. His gene-enhanced mind resisted it, yet still it scraped against his thoughts like claws on metal. Words that were not words whispered at the edge of hearing. Hunger, hatred, consume. Acastian staggered suddenly, clutching his helm. They're in my head. Steel yourself, apothecary. This is the shadow of the hive mind. Resist it. The apothecary drew in a ragged breath, forcing discipline into his stance. Yes, my captain. Decimus spat blood and wiped it from his helm's grill. I would rather 100 Carnifexes than this sorcery. Titus shook his head. Not sorcery. Worse. This is no single mind, no warp-spawn daemon. This is the will of an entire species unified, endless, a tide that does not break. As if an answer, the ruins themselves seemed to tremble. The sky darkened further as spore clouds thickened, blotting out the last rays of light. Then came the first sign of the psychic storm. The auspex in Titus's gauntlet blared static before going dead.
Vox links shrieked with distortion. Even the sacred machine spirits of their armor rebelled under the unseen pressure. Icons flickered, lenses dimmed, targeting arrays stuttered. Decimus cursed. They blind us, they strip us bare before they strike. They cannot strip us of our duty, Titus said coldly. He tightened his grip on his sword. We hold. The whispers grew louder, 1,000 voices layered upon one another, all screaming in hunger. Shapes slithered in the corner of vision, shadows that moved against the natural order, always just beyond focus. Even the mighty Astartes' mind strained against the pressure. Brother Acastian's breathing grew ragged. I hear voices, so many voices. They show me home, my family. They're calling me, Captain, calling me back. Lies, Titus roared. He grabbed Acastian's pauldron, shaking him hard enough to rattle Ceramet. Your family is long returned to dust, apothecary. This is the Xenos clawing at your soul. Resist! For a moment, Acastian's eyes cleared. Then a screech echoed across the ruins, so high-pitched that it felt like it tore straight into their skulls. The swarm moved again. From the shadows came creatures taller than men, but leaner than gaunts, their claws long and dripping with venom. Gene stealers. Their eyes glowed with alien cunning, their movements unnervingly deliberate compared to the mindless gaunts. They didn't charge blindly, they circled, they hunted. Titus swung his sword into guard. Stealers. They mean to break us before the true strike. Stand ready. The first came leaping, claws extended. Titus's blade met it mid-air, splitting its torso in a burst of ichor. A second darted low, impossibly fast. Decimus intercepted it with a savage kick, his chainsword ripping down to cut it in half. But more came. 6, 12, 2 dozen. Their movements were a blur, slashing and feinting with inhuman speed. The Ultramarines fought like titans, every strike measured and merciless. Bolters thundered at point-blank range, tearing limbs from bodies. Chainswords shrieked as they carved through alien flesh. For every stealer that fell, 2 more appeared, clinging to walls, leaping from ceilings, darting from shadows. Acastian carved one apart with a brutal sweep of his chainsword, ichor coating his armor. But then his movements faltered. A shadow pressed against his mind once more, freezing his limbs for a split second. A gene stealer pounced. Its claws sunk into his side, ripping open Ceramet. Acastian roared, stabbing his Northesium drill into the beast's head, pulping it instantly. But the wound was deep. His steps grew unsteady, blood pouring freely. Captain, I will safeguard our gene seed, I swear it. You will not fall while I still draw breath, Titus said, driving his sword through another stealer's skull. But deep within the ruins, something else stirred. Not claws, not teeth, something greater. The psychic presence grew stronger, flooding the air with oppressive weight. Even Titus staggered beneath it, his mind straining. He realized then the Carnifex had not been the apex predator. It had been bait. The hive mind was not done testing them. This was only the beginning of the nightmare.
ruins groaned like a dying beast as something vast moved within. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, spilling across broken walls and shattered towers. The air itself grew heavy, as though pressing down on their armor. Even for Astartes, breathing became labored. Then it stepped into view, a hive tyrant. Towering above the wreckage, its silhouette was a mockery of a king. Wings stretched wide, dripping with mucus and ichor. Its chitin was black as obsidian, streaked with pulsating veins that glowed sickly green. In its claws it bore weapons grown from its own flesh, a venom cannon in one arm, a scything talon as long as Titus was tall in the other. Behind it, the lesser Tyranids quieted, their hissing fading into silence. They didn't need to attack. Their master had come. Brother Decimus raised his chainsword, its teeth screaming as if in defiance. "Emperor, preserve us!" Titus's voice cut sharp. "He does not preserve, he strengthens. We fight, brothers!" The tyrant moved with blinding speed, slamming its talon down where Titus had stood. He rolled aside, the strike shattering ferrocrete and sending shards flying. Decimus charged, chainsword roaring, and struck the beast's leg. Sparks flew as adamantium teeth met alien chitin. The tyrant shrieked, a sound that tore through the ruins like thunder. The venom cannon spat a glob of corrosive sludge. It struck Acastian full in the chest. The apothecary's armor hissed and bubbled, ceramatite sloughing away in chunks. He fell to one knee, agony painted across his vox-distorted cries. "Brother!" Titus surged forward, hacking at the tyrant's talon to drive it back. The beast's tail lashed like a whip, smashing into Decimus and throwing him through a crumbling wall. Titus's blade bit deep into the tyrant's forelimb, severing one of the smaller feeder claws. Black ichor sprayed, coating his armor. The monster howled. Psychic rage flooded the air. Images crashed into their minds, worlds stripped bare, oceans boiled to sludge, billions consumed without pause. It was the vision of the hive itself, eternal and endless. Titus gritted his teeth and pushed the images aside. "I am Captain Titus of the Ultramarines. I do not yield to nightmares." The tyrant lunged. Its talon punched through his pauldron, pinning him against a broken wall. The ceramatite groaned as cracks spidered across his armor. Decimus roared from the rubble. With his chainsword broken, he ripped his bolt pistol free and emptied the magazine point blank into the tyrant's side. Explosive rounds tore chunks of flesh and ichor, staggering the beast. "Get off him!" Acastian, his armor melting away, stumbled forward with his narthecium still clenched in his gauntlet. He drove the drill into the tyrant's leg, forcing it deep with all his remaining strength. The creature shrieked and swatted him aside like an insect. Acastian's body slammed into a pillar and lay still. Fury burned through Titus. With a surge of strength, he tore himself free from the wall, ignoring the grinding pain in his shoulder. He rammed his sword up through the tyrant's jaw, driving it deep until the blade erupted from the crown of its skull. The monster thrashed violently, wings beating, psychic energy bursting in waves that cracked stone and split metal. Titus held fast, roaring his defiance, driving the weapon deeper with both hands. For Gilliman! For the Emperor! The hive tyrant convulsed, its ichor spilling in rivers. With one final shuddering cry, it collapsed, dragging Titus down with it. When the dust settled, only silence remained. Titus staggered to his feet, pulling his blade free from the tyrant's skull. Its corpse twitched once, then lay still. The psychic pressure evaporated like smoke in the wind. The surviving gaunts scattered, their unity shattered without their master's will. Decimus limped to his side, helm cracked, chestplate caved in. We held, Captain." Titus looked to Acastian's broken body. He knelt, pressing a hand to the fallen apothecary's helm. "He will be remembered, his gene seed recovered, his sacrifice honored." The battlefield was theirs, but the cost was written in blood and fire. Titus stood tall, the corpse of the hive tyrant looming behind him like a macabre trophy. His voice carried through the ruins, firm and unyielding. "We are Ultramarines. Where we stand, the Imperium endures." And for one more night, amidst ash and ruin, the Emperor's light burned against the endless dark.
Dawn broke over the ruins of Cadmeon Hive, but no warmth came with its light. Smoke still rose from shattered spires, and the ash of the fallen drifted like snow. The Tyranid swarm had been broken, its will severed with the death of its hive tyrant, yet victory felt hollow. The names of the dead weighed heavier than the broken carcasses left across the field. Captain Titus stood amidst the silence, his armor scarred, his sword slick with dried ichor. He thought of Decimus, wounded yet unbroken, of Acastian, who had given his life to cripple the beast, and of countless guardsmen who had died screaming in the shadows. The ledger of sacrifice stretched on without end. Such was war in the 41st millennium, a tally written in endless blood. Still, the Ultramarines endured. Their defiance had preserved Cadmeon for another day. The Imperium would sing of victory, though few would know the truth, that survival was never certain, and that the line between triumph and annihilation is measured in a single blade's edge. The Emperor's light burns eternal, but every spark demands its price.